Only those who dare to fail greatly will ever achieve greatly. Those are the words of Senator Robert Kennedy. And those are the words which I have lived by my entire life. My name is John Quiros. I'm 23 years old, and I'm a graduate of the University of South Florida. Go Bulls! Mi nombre es John Quiros. Tengo 23 años y me acabo de graduar de la Universidad del Sur de Florida. I'm proud to be here to introduce a person who has fought for the working class and especially for Hispanic families her entire life. I am thankful that Secretary Clinton has decided to run for president because she and President Bill Clinton are the reasons why I'm a Democrat. I say this because of a memory I have of the presidential election of 1996. I was just a young boy then, but I can remember my parents watching the election results. And there was a big map on the screen, and there was the United States, and we had blue states and red states, but more blue states than red states. And then the announcement came through that President Clinton had been elected to a second term. And I saw great joy and happiness come from my parents. And it surprised me because my parents would not become U.S. citizens for many years after that. But their joy and happiness in seeing a president elected that they could not vote for. Their happiness is a result of the Clinton policies that created 26 million jobs, that left a massive surplus in the federal budget, that guided our country through the longest era of peacetime since the Cold War. Because of the achievements of the Clinton White House and because of the achievements of then Senator Clinton, I supported her in 2008. And I am ecstatic to support her in her bid for the White House in 2016. And as much as I love President Bill Clinton, it's time to elect a woman to the White House. And there is no woman more qualified, more ready than Hillary Rodham Clinton. A pesar que yo admiro al presidente Bill Clinton, es tiempo para elegir a una mujer a la Casa Blanca. Y no hay ni una mujer más preparada, más lista para llevar a este país en la Casa Blanca que Hillary Rodham Clinton. Yes, my friends, we've made a lot of progress since 2008, creating millions of jobs, stabilizing the U.S. economy, fighting terrorism abroad and at home, and providing millions of Americans access to affordable health care. But yet, there is much work to be done. So now is not the time to give back the keys to the White House to the clown show of extremists in the Republican Party. No, my friends. Now is the time for strong and experienced leadership that can only be given to us by Hillary Rodham Clinton. As a college graduate, I can tell you, College isn't cheap. It really isn't. Student loans are part of the process of attaining a college education. But Hillary Clinton understands the struggle of everyday college students and everyday college graduates. That's why I support her plan to help refinance college loans and then help states find new ways to reinvest in a college education. I also have faith that under Hillary Clinton's leadership, we will finally have comprehensive immigration reform in the United States that will allow millions of undocumented immigrants the opportunity to citizenship. And finally dissipate with the fear of deportation of families. I also know that she will find common sense solutions to the financial depression that our brothers and sisters in Puerto Rico are facing today. And that's why it brings me great delight and a great pleasure to introduce to you the next President of the United States, Hillary Rodham Clinton.
Hello, Orlando! Woo! Thank you so much. Thank you, and didn't John do a great job? I was really grateful, and I want to thank everybody who's already appeared before you. Cristal Cruz, who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance, thank you so much. Gina Marie, who led the Star-Spangled Banner, she was just amazing. I am so pleased that Linda Chapin is here with us, and Dr. LaVon Wright-Bracey, so many important and very dedicated people who understand what's at stake in this election. This is my fourth trip to Florida in the campaign. The reason for coming is not just the weather. It's because Florida is so much a symbol of America. Diverse, dynamic, optimistic. You have everything in this state, from big cities to small towns, from high-rises to family farms. And the diversity of the people here in Florida sends such a strong message about the importance of us always valuing the fact we are a nation of immigrants. And we need to understand that and support it. Now, like America, Florida is always changing. And certainly here in Central Florida, we've seen so many people come here for the jobs, for the opportunities. You know, some are even starting to call Central Florida Puerto Rico's 79th municipality. Well, I went to Puerto Rico in September because I believe anyone who wants to be president should give attention to Puerto Rico and should remind our fellow Americans Puerto Ricans are American citizens. That's something often overlooked or even denied. And it is one of the great ironies of our law and our history that Puerto Ricans who are citizens in Puerto Rico cannot vote for their president and commander-in-chief, but if you move to Central Florida, because you're a citizen, you can vote. And what we need to recognize is that there's much we can do if we are supporting our Puerto Rican friends. It's great that today there is a National Day of Action for Puerto Rico happening on Capitol Hill. We have to find a long-term solution to the economic and healthcare challenges facing Puerto Rico. And everyone here with ties to the island, you have to help us be part of the solution. Your engagement and support will really matter. You see, I think we are all in this together, and I am proud to be running for president to make our country and our economy work for everyone, not just those at the top. Now, I will say something my Republican friends are not happy about. But I try to stay factual. I don't think you have to make up stuff to demonstrate the differences between us and them. But here it is. Our economy does, as John was saying, our economy does so much better when we have a Democrat in the White House. And, you know, unemployment is lower, incomes are higher, and you are 4 times more likely to have a recession when we have a Republican in the White House. Now, you don't have to go back hundreds of years. Let's just go back 35 years. We've had 5 presidents, 3 Republicans and 2 Democrats. I happen to know both of the Democrats. And each of the Democrats inherited economic problems from their Republican predecessors. In my husband's case, he inherited a recession, and the debt of our country had been quadrupled in the prior 12 years. I remember Bill telling me after the election, he said, it's so much worse than they told us. And he was asked in the weeks after he was elected, so what is it you bring to Washington? And he said, well, I guess arithmetic. So he began adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing, and after 8 years, we did end up with 23 million new jobs. But most importantly, incomes rose for everybody, not just those at the top, folks in the middle, working people. And more people were lifted out of poverty than at any time in our recent history. And we did end up with a balanced budget and a surplus. Now, one would think, with that record of success, the Republicans might say to themselves, hey, maybe we should build on that. But that's not what the next Republican president decided to do, as we well recall. He began to dismantle that economic policy, literally brick by brick. Took his eye off what was happening in the economy, cut taxes for the wealthy, got out of the way of corporations, ignored the mortgage market problems, and you know where we ended up. In fact, Florida, you didn't just live through a great recession, you had a greater recession. The hole was deeper, it took you longer to climb out. Now, Republicans do want us to have a case of collective amnesia. It's very inconvenient when we point out that their trickle-down economic ideology doesn't work and will not work. In fact, I remember after the 2008 election, President-elect Obama called, asked me to come see him. I didn't know why, went to Chicago. Turned out he wanted me to be Secretary of State. But before we got to that, it's just he and I, and he says to me, it is so much worse than they told us. I said, you know, President-elect, I've heard that before. And this time it was even worse. The worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. I want you to remember this, because when you leave here today and you talk to friends or neighbors or colleagues and they say, well, what were you doing there? I want you to say, well, I'm supporting the next president of the United States because she's going to get the economy working for everybody again. So here's what I want you to remember. When President Obama came into office, we were losing 800,000 jobs a month. 9 million Americans ended up losing their jobs. 5 million homes were lost, a lot of them right here in Florida. $13 trillion of family wealth, homes, cars, retirement savings, college funds wiped out. I don't think President Obama gets the credit he deserves from saving us from falling into a Great Depression that was done by the Republicans before he even got there. So my point about this is we're moving again. We've recovered 13 million jobs. We've seen 68 straight months of job growth. Manufacturing's coming back. The auto industry, which was on the brink of total collapse, was saved. It's coming back. So we're standing, but we're not yet running the way America should. I've been traveling across our country, and I've been doing a lot of listening. I've heard from families about the stress of the bills piling up, of caring for an aging parent, a child suffering from substance abuse, or a loved one with mental illness, about how the costs of everything, college and prescription drugs and childcare, are all going up faster than wages. And too many young people, as John said, being crushed by student debt, and many of them unable to start or finish college because of the costs. So we've got some work to do. Now, I'm not running for my husband's third term, and I'm not running for Barack Obama's third term. I'm running for my first term, but we're going to get to work, and we're going to build on the progress that we've made. I am fighting for an America that creates the good-paying jobs of the future, where your wages rise, not your taxes, where it is easier to pay for child care, send your kids to college, pay for your prescription drugs, take care of your aging parents. Those should not be luxuries. You should get the help you need to get those jobs and to get that support so that you can live the kind of American dream we all believe in. And I am working and fighting for an America where everyone who works hard has a ladder of opportunity again. You know, I was raised to believe in the basic bargain of America. You work hard, you do your part, you should be able to get ahead and stay ahead. I am going to do everything in my power as your president to make that bargain real again. We're going to start by providing more early childhood education and preschool so every kid gets a good start when they show up in kindergarten. And I do have a plan where if you go to a public college or university, you will not have to borrow a dime to pay tuition. And you will be able to refinance your student debt. How many people have student debt? Look at those hands. How many ever had student debt? I did. I'll tell you what, we have $1.2 trillion in student debt. That is really holding back so many people. I've met young people who, they can't get out on their own. They can't afford to move out of their parents' home after they get their college degree. They can't get married because they can't afford it. We have got to get college affordable again and get the debt down to save you thousands of dollars as you go forward. I am also working and fighting for an America that leads with strength and smarts, keeping our people safe and defeating the terrorist networks that threaten us. And finally, I'm fighting for an America where we lift each other up again, where we have each other's backs. Because when families are strong, America is strong. That means keeping immigrant families together. That means giving them a real path to citizenship. It means an end to discrimination against LGBT Americans. It means protecting women's health and women's rights and standing up for Planned Parenthood. And it means rebuilding trust and respect between law enforcement and the communities they serve. And it means helping Americans struggling with addiction to end up in recovery, not in prison. And I'll tell you what, it also means standing up to the gun lobby. The gun lobby! 90 Americans a day die from gun violence, homicides, suicides, tragic avoidable accidents. 33,000 Americans a year die. It is time for us to say we're going to have comprehensive background checks. We're going to close the gun show loophole. We're going to close the online loophole, close the Charleston loophole, end the immunity for the gun makers and sellers. And listen to this. This is what gets me. You know what I just outlined? All of that is supported by 92% of Americans, and more importantly, 83% of gun owners support that agenda because they want to be responsible and not let guns fall into the wrong hands. Now, we are hearing a lot of different things, aren't we, from the Republicans running for president. They seem more interested in seeing who can say the most offensive and insulting comments. You've heard what they've said. They have insulted Latinos, women, Muslims. They determined to absolutely insult everybody before this is over. They're out trumping Trump, if you will. Well, I have one word for them: basta. Enough. Let's end this kind of insulting hatred and divisiveness. That's why I am so honored that Latino leaders like Ricky Martin are standing with me in this campaign. When Donald Trump began making racism and hatred the hallmarks of his campaign, when he called immigrants rapists and drug dealers, when he shouted down and demanded Jorge Ramos stop doing his job, Ricky Martin could have let it go by, but he stood up and he fought back. He said, we have to fight for every right we have today and demand respect. Well, I am with you, Ricky. We're going to fight for our rights. We're going to demand respect. Now, I want to say a word about how we're going to create these good-paying jobs, and I'm just going to keep talking and explain to you what it is I'm going to do, okay? And I'm particularly glad to have representatives from our construction trades here today, men and women who build America. We're going to create good jobs and rising wages by once again investing in our infrastructure. I have laid out a 5-year, $275 billion plan. And Florida is the gateway for trade with Latin America. It's a huge market. So let's rebuild and invest in the infrastructure we have. You know, just think about this. We have so many roads and bridges that are potholed and crumbling. Here in Orlando, commuters lose 46 hours a year stuck in traffic. You know, this is not just about good jobs for hardworking men and women. This is about time and money we are wasting. I hope that Congress finally passes a long-term highway bill this week. Here in Florida, your highways have 4 of the biggest traffic bottlenecks in the country. That should be fixed. But even if Congress won't do the right thing, I am prepared with my plan to really begin to do what we need to do. We have to expand our commitment to building and maintaining our infrastructure because it's a competitive necessity. You know, in this country, we don't have one of the top 20 airports in America. In fact, the closest we get is Cincinnati is number 30. We also have to expand new high-tech infrastructure, and that means connecting everybody in America to have access to high-speed internet. Right now, we don't have that. We know how to do this. We did it with electricity, and we're going to do it again. And don't forget all the infrastructure under the ground: water mains, sewer systems, gas lines. We've got to also invest in bringing those up to speed as well. I have a comprehensive strategy to upgrade our energy infrastructure, to expand solar and energy efficiency, boost clean energy technologies. And especially here in Florida, we have to make this state and our communities across America resilient to climate change. You know, look, All of the Republicans say the same thing. You know, when they're asked about climate change, they say, well, I don't know, I'm not a scientist. Well, my answer to that is go talk to a scientist and actually listen to a scientist. Any projection about Florida demonstrates how vulnerable this state is to climate change. In fact, down in Miami, we're already seeing streets that flood at high tide on sunny days. Drinking water wells around the state are being inundated with salt water, becoming unusable. And that's all without a major hurricane hitting in recent years. So anybody who doesn't take climate change seriously just needs to be convinced that they have to get out of the way, because we're going to create jobs, create many, many new businesses, and begin to fight back against climate change when I am president. And we can't leave any money on the sidelines. That's why I want to create a new national infrastructure bank. I want to bring back what are called Build America bonds. That was a successful program that helped cities and states borrow the money they needed to invest in infrastructure at lower cost. And it did a lot of good across America. We have to use every tool at our disposal, and we're going to make a real difference together. Now, it's sort of sad to me because when I was a senator, we had no problem getting Democrats and Republicans coming together to invest and understand the importance of infrastructure. Now we've got Republican candidates for president who want to slash what we spend by 80%. Ted Cruz has supported legislation to do that. And I really don't understand it. Marco Rubio followed right along. He wants to slash funding. And those people who say, well, let the states do it, do you really want to put responsibility for funding Florida's infrastructure in the hands of Rick Scott? I don't know if you know this, but he sent $2 billion back to Washington that would have been spent on infrastructure right here in Florida. Tell that story, guys. Let people know. That could have created good-paying jobs and spurred economic growth. You have to wonder about Governor Scott's priorities. Florida is called the Sunshine State for a reason, yet Florida is lagging behind in solar power. And I hate to tell you this, states like Massachusetts and New Jersey are years ahead. There's no reason that should be true. And on top of that, Governor Scott still refuses to expand Medicaid. There's no excuse for that either. I don't mean to be a little parochial here, but Arkansas expanded Medicaid. Alabama's Republican governor is talking seriously about expanding Medicaid. The incoming governor of Louisiana is making this a top priority. Just saying, Florida. It's not only the right thing to do for people who deserve to have their health care needs met, it's good for rural hospitals. It's good for doctors, nurses, other health care providers. And we need to make sure that we provide the support for the Affordable Care Act. But we're going to have to improve it, get the costs down, get prescription drug costs down. So you can see I can keep going, but I know you've been more than patient here. And what I want to ask you all is to join my campaign. You know, Florida is so important. We see that time and time again. Well, number one, I need your help in the primary. So don't just come tonight. Make sure you're registered to vote. Make sure you do vote on March the 1st. In fact, I want you to join the campaign right now, and here's how you can do it. Take out your phone. I know you all have phones. And text JOIN, J-O-I-N, to 47246 to get involved right now. That's JOIN, J-O-I-N, to 47246. Because even though my name will be on the ballot, this election is really about you, about finding the solutions to the challenges we face together, getting back into problem solving where Americans are better at that than anybody else in the world. I got to tell you, what really gets me up every day is my belief so profoundly in the promise of America. My grandfather was a factory worker. He came to this country as a young immigrant with his family. And he went to work in the Scranton Lace Mills in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And he worked really hard to support his family, but also because he believed in the promise of America, that his sons could get ahead. And they did. Every one of them went to college. And when my dad graduated in the middle of the Great Depression in 1935, he couldn't find a job, so he hopped a freight train. They used to do that in those days. And he got all the way to Chicago, and he found a job. He was a salesman, then he went into the Navy, where he was a chief petty officer, and then when he came out, he started a small business. Now, my mother had a very different life. She was abandoned and rejected by her own family and sent to live with grandparents who didn't want her. So by the age of 14, she was out working as a housemaid in somebody else's home to support herself. So even though their lives were very, very different, they both believed that life would get better for them and for their children in our country. That's what I want people to believe again. I want everybody to not only believe in the promise of America, but to work to achieve it. And when I look at my new granddaughter, obviously Bill and I are going to do whatever we can to make sure she has every opportunity in life. But I'll tell you, that's not enough. It matters what kind of country she becomes an adult in and what kind of world is out there waiting for her. And I want to make sure that not just my granddaughter, but all the children and young people in America have the same promise and potential that I believed was there waiting for me. You shouldn't have to be the granddaughter of a former president to be able to fulfill your dreams in America. I want that to be true for the granddaughters of factory workers and the grandsons of truck drivers and every single person, and particularly every child in America. Help me make that true. Support me in this campaign, and let's go make America live up to its promise again. Thank you, and God bless you.